The hood came off slow. 30 seconds of silence in that Alabama church basement. 400 Klansmen watching. The face underneath made grown men step back. October 1947. Birmingham, the Grand Cyclops wasn't who they thought. Spring, 1947. The First Baptist Church basement in Birmingham, Alabama, smelled like kerosene and old wood. Tuesday nights. That's when they met. A man walked down the concrete steps at 8:47 p.m., light brown skin, could pass. Wearing work boots and a flannel shirt with paint stains that looked 3 weeks old, he kept his eyes down, spoke with a slow drawl that sounded like northern Georgia, maybe Tennessee. "Name's James Wheeler," he said to the man at the door. "I'm here about the Brotherhood." The guard looked him over, checked his hands. Working hands. Checked his neck for any jewelry, any symbols. "Nothing. Who sent you?" "Roy Tucker." "From the lumber mill. Said y'all been looking for good men." Roy Tucker existed, worked at the mill, attended meetings. That was all they needed to hear. "Come back Thursday. Wear dark clothes. Don't tell nobody." Thursday came. James Wheeler showed up at 9 p.m. This time, 12 men were waiting. They handed him a hood, not the ceremonial kind, just a flour sack with eye holes cut rough. "Put it on." He did. They walked him through an initiation that lasted 40 minutes. Questions about his family, his work, why he wanted to join, what he thought about the mongrel problem up north. James Wheeler answered every question with the right words. Not too eager, not too quiet. He mentioned a cousin in Memphis who lost his job to a colored man. He mentioned scripture, the parts they wanted to hear. He never smiled. At 10:18 p.m., they welcomed him in. For 6 months, James Wheeler attended every meeting. He sat in the back row, third seat from the left. He listened, took no notes, never asked questions unless directly spoken to. When they passed around the collection plate for operations, he put in $2, never more, never less. Enough to contribute, not enough to stand out. He learned their rhythm. The chapter had 63 active members. 17 were Birmingham police. 9 worked at the steel plant. 5 were city officials. The rest were laborers, shop owners, clerks. They met twice a week Tuesdays for planning, Thursdays for actions. Actions meant night rides, beatings, burnings, warnings. James Wheeler volunteered for none of it at first. When they asked why, he said, "I need to see how y'all operate. Learn the discipline." They respected that. July 1947. The Grand Cyclops, a man named Vernon Hightower, owned 3 hardware stores, started bringing maps to the meetings. Not local maps, maps of New York City, Harlem. Vernon said, spreading the paper across a folding table. "That's the infected heart. You cut that out, the whole body dies." He pointed to streets, businesses, apartment buildings. "We got brothers moving up there next month. Setting up cells. We're going to coordinate. Hit 15 locations, same night. Banks, clubs, churches. Show them what happens when they forget their place." James Wheeler sat in the back row and said nothing. But his eyes traced every mark on that map, every address, every name. Vernon looked up, scanning the room. "We need good men willing to travel, men who can pass through their neighborhoods without standing out." His eyes landed on James Wheeler. "Wheeler, you got family up north?" James nodded slowly. "Had an aunt in Newark. Passed 2 years back." "You ever been to New York?" "Once. Didn't care for it." Vernon smiled. "Good. You're on the list. August, o mie 940 și 7. The meetings got more specific. Vernon started bringing in operatives from other states, Tennessee, Georgia, Mississippi. They were organizing something bigger than Birmingham had ever attempted. A northern expansion, coordinated, funded by businessmen who wanted order restored. James Wheeler watched them bring in crates, watched them stack materials in the church basement storage room, watched them write names in ledgers. He never touched anything, never lingered too long, but his memory was exact. On August 19th, during a Thursday meeting, Vernon announced the final timeline. October 4th, Saturday night, Harlem, 15 targets, simultaneous strikes. We'll have 30 men on the ground, 50 in reserve. The coloreds got no organization, no discipline. They'll scatter. Someone in the third row raised a hand. What about their gangsters? Heard they got some tough ones up there. Vernon laughed. Gangsters? Street thugs. They'll fold soon as they see real men with a plan. He pulled out a photograph, passed it around the room. This one calls himself Bumpy Johnson. Runs the numbers racket. Thinks he owns Harlem. We're hitting his main counting house first. Send a message. The photograph reached the back row. James Wheeler looked at it for 3 seconds. Didn't react. Passed it to the man beside him. But something in his eyes changed, just for a moment. Something Vernon Hightower would have recognized if he'd been paying attention. The look of a man who'd just confirmed what he came to find. September 1947. The plan solidified. Vernon scheduled a final meeting for September 28th. A ceremony, he called it. Every operative who'd be traveling north needed to attend. They'd perform the oath of purification, a ritual where members removed their hoods, spoke their true names before God and the Brotherhood, and swore loyalty unto death. No anonymity for this mission, Vernon said. We stand as men, proud, unmasked before each other. That's how we build trust. James Wheeler had attended 24 meetings by then. He knew the layout of the church basement, knew which door stuck, knew the guard rotations, knew every face in that room, even under the hoods. On September 27th, he sent a letter. No return address. Mailed from a post office 3 towns over. 1 page. 5 sentences. The letter arrived in Harlem 2 days later. Bumpy Johnson's wife, Mamie, opened it, read it twice, walked to the phone and made 1 call. All she said was, "He's ready." September 28th, 1947, 8:30 p.m. James Wheeler walked down those concrete steps one last time. 400 men packed the basement that night. They'd called in every chapter within 200 miles. This wasn't just Birmingham anymore. This was a movement. Vernon Hightower stood at the front, beside a wooden altar draped in red cloth. On it, a Bible, a knife, and a burning cross replica, 2 feet tall. Brothers, Vernon began. Tonight we stand together, unhooded, unafraid. Tonight you see the faces of the men who will take back this nation. The ceremony began. One by one, members stepped forward, removed their hoods, stated their full names, placed their hand on the Bible. James Wheeler stood in the back, waiting. Vernon's voice echoed off the concrete walls. We'll start with our travelers, the soldiers heading north. He looked directly at the back row. Wheeler, James Wheeler, stepped forward. 400 men turned to watch. James Wheeler walked down the center aisle. Slow, steady, boots on concrete. No hesitation. He reached the altar. Vernon smiled. Remove your hood, brother. Speak your name before God. James Wheeler reached up with both hands, gripped the edges of the white cloth, and pulled it off. Rewind 14 months. July 1946. Harlem. The first bomb went off at 2:14 a.m. on a Tuesday. Small Paradise Cafe on 135th Street. The kind of place where musicians gathered after midnight, trumpet players, singers, poets, who worked day jobs as janitors and cooks. No warning. Just a flash of light that turned the front windows into shrapnel. 3 people inside. A waitress named Dorothy Clark, 61 years old. A piano player named Sam Briggs, 24. And the owner, Marcus Webb, who'd served in France during the First War and came home thinking he'd earned something. Dorothy lost her left arm below the elbow. Sam went blind in one eye. Marcus stood in the rubble the next morning and didn't say a word for 6 hours. The police came at 9 a.m., 2 white detectives. They walked the scene for 11 minutes, wrote 4 sentences in a notebook, told Marcus it was probably internal trouble or rival business dispute. They were gone by 9:30. Harlem knew better. Bumpy Johnson heard about it by 3 a.m. Phone call from one of his corner men. By 4 a.m., he was standing outside Small Paradise, watching the fire department hose down what remained. He didn't go inside, just stood across the street, watching, thinking. A man approached from his left. Tall, dark suit even at that hour. Bumpy's right hand, a man named Illinois Gordon. Police saying what? Bumpy asked, eyes still on the building, saying nothing useful. Bomb? Dynamite. Simple. Maybe 5 sticks. Tucked under the front step. Bumpy was quiet for 10 seconds. Who walks past Small Paradise at 2 a.m. that nobody knows? Illinois understood the question. Someone who doesn't belong here. 2 weeks later, it happened again, August 2nd. Sherman's barbershop on Lenox Avenue. 1:45 a.m. this time. Same method. Dynamite under the steps. The building survived, but the message was clear. No deaths this time, but that wasn't mercy. That was practice. Bumpy called a meeting, not at his usual places, not at the clubs or the social halls. He called it at Abyssinian Baptist Church, 138th Street. Reverend Adam Clayton Powell Jr. opened the doors after midnight. 40 men came, business owners, numbers, runners, the ones who kept Harlem functioning. Bumpy stood at the front, no podium, just him. 2 bombings, he said. Both black-owned. Both places where our people gather. Police aren't investigating. That tells us everything. A man in the 3rd row, owner of a grocery on 8th Avenue, stood up. This the Italians? They trying to push us out? Bumpy shook his head slowly. Italians make noise first. Warnings. Negotiations. This is someone who doesn't negotiate. Another voice from the back. Then who? Bumpy looked at Illinois. Illinois stepped forward, unfolded a newspaper clipping, handed it to the man nearest him. 3 months ago, Illinois said, Birmingham, Alabama. 6 colored businesses firebombed in 1 week. Same method. Dynamite under the steps, early morning. No witnesses. The clipping passed through the room. 2 months ago, Illinois continued. Memphis. 4 churches. Same pattern. Bumpy's voice cut through the murmurs. They're moving north, testing, learning our streets, and we're next on the list. Silence. What do we do? Someone asked. Bumpy didn't answer right away. He walked to the window, looked out at Lenox Avenue. At 12:47 a.m., it was still alive, people walking, cabs rolling, music spilling from second-floor windows. We do what we always do, he finally said. We protect what's ours. How? The grocer pressed. We don't even know who they are. Bumpy turned back to face the room. Then we find out. September 1946. The 3rd bombing killed someone. September 19th. A boarding house on 132nd. Home to 7 families. Bomb went off at 3:30 a.m. The explosion collapsed part of the 2nd floor into the 1st. A woman named Ella Marks, 43 years old, died in the rubble. Mother of 2. Worked as a seamstress. Had lived in that building for 9 years. This time, Harlem didn't wait for police. By sunrise, 200 people surrounded the building. By noon, it was 500. They stayed all day. Silent vigil. No chanting. No signs. Just presence. Bumpy walked through the crowd at 2 p.m. People parted for him without being asked. He stopped at the front steps, what remained of them, and crouched down. Illinois knelt beside him. Same type, same placement. Bumpy's jaw tightened. He picked up a piece of scorched wood, turned it over, looked at the burn pattern. They're getting bolder, Illinois said quietly. No. Bumpy dropped the wood, stood. They're getting comfortable. That's different. He looked at Illinois. I need everything we know about Klan activity in the South. Cities, dates, methods, everything. You thinking they're organized? I'm thinking they're testing whether we'll fight back. Bumpy scanned the crowd, saw the anger, the fear, and they're about to learn something. October 1946. Bumpy started pulling strings most people didn't know he had. Calls to Chicago, Detroit, Philadelphia. Conversations with men who ran their cities the way Bumpy ran Harlem. Sharing information, patterns, movements. What they learned wasn't good. The Klan had restructured. New leadership, new funding. They weren't just Southern farmers with torches anymore. They had businessmen, politicians, money, and a plan to reclaim northern cities by destabilizing black economic centers. Harlem wasn't random. It was strategic. One night in late October, Bumpy sat in his apartment on Edgecombe Avenue. Mamie brought him coffee at 11 p.m. He was surrounded by papers, maps, newspaper clippings, handwritten notes. "You haven't slept in 3 days," she said. "I'll sleep when this is handled." She sat down across from him, looked at the maps. "What are you planning?" Bumpy was quiet for a long moment. Then, "Something nobody's tried before." "Which is?" He met her eyes. "I'm going to find them before they find us." "Find them where?" "Where they feel safe." Mamie understood. Her expression changed. "Ellsworth." She only used his real name when it was serious. "That's not just dangerous. That's necessary. You can't fight them on their territory." "I'm not going to fight them." He folded one of the maps. "I'm going to disappear them from the inside." "How?" Bumpy stood, walked to the window, looked down at Harlem, his Harlem, still alive at midnight, despite everything. "There's a reason they wear hoods," he said. "They're cowards. They need anonymity to feel brave. But that works both ways." Mamie stood slowly. "You're talking about infiltration. I'm talking about becoming their nightmare. You can't pass as one of them." Bumpy turned back to her. "I'm light enough, with the right clothes, right accent, right story." He paused. "And the right anger. They'll kill you if they find out. They'll try." He picked up a photograph from the table, the aftermath of Ella Mark's building. "But right now, they're killing us, and the police aren't stopping it. The government isn't stopping it. So I will." Mamie was quiet. "Then, when?" "Soon as I know where their main chapter is, where the orders come from." He got his answer 2 weeks later. A contact in Atlanta, a Pullman porter who carried information along with luggage, sent word. Birmingham, First Baptist Church basement. Tuesday and Thursday nights, 60-plus active members, planning something big for Harlem. Bumpy read the message 3 times, burned it. Made a phone call. "Illinois, I need you to run things for a while." "How long?" "However long it takes." "Where are you going?" "Somewhere I can't be Bumpy Johnson." November 1946. Bumpy left Harlem on a Tuesday morning, told almost no one. Mamie, Illinois, his mother. That was it. He took a train south, changed clothes in Philadelphia. By the time he reached Washington, he looked different. Work boots, canvas jacket, a scar he'd given himself across his left forearm fresh, made to look like a mill accident. He practiced the accent for 300 miles, softened his speech, slowed it down, changed his posture, became smaller, invisible. By the time he reached Birmingham, James Wheeler existed, and Bumpy Johnson had disappeared. For 8 months, Harlem wouldn't know where their protector went. They'd hear rumors. Some said he was in prison, some said he'd been killed quietly, some said he ran. Only 3 people knew the truth. And in a church basement in Alabama, a man in a white hood sat in the back row, learning the names and faces of everyone who wanted his home destroyed. Patience. That's what Bumpy Johnson had that his enemies didn't. Patience, and a memory that never forgot a face. November 18th, 1946. James Wheeler rented a room above a hardware store on 4th Avenue North in Birmingham. $8 a week. Shared bathroom down the hall. One window that looked out at a rail yard. He paid 2 months up front. Cash. Told the landlady, Mrs. Hobbs, 70 years old, smelled like camphor, that he was looking for mill work. "You got people here?" she asked, counting the bills twice. "No, ma'am. Just passing through. Heard there was steady work." She studied his face. Light enough to confuse, dark enough to question. "You mixed?" "My mama was Choctaw. Daddy was from Carolina." That satisfied her. Mixed was acceptable in ways black wasn't. She handed him a key. "No visitors. No drinking in the room. Rent's due first of the month." "Yes, ma'am." James Wheeler climbed the stairs and didn't come down for 3 days. He spent those days learning Birmingham. Not the streets. He'd studied maps for weeks on the train. He needed to learn the rhythm. What time the mills changed shifts. When the police did their rounds. Where white men gathered. Where they didn't. On the 4th day, he walked into Barker's lumber mill at 6:47 a.m. 50 men stood in a line outside the foreman's office. Day labor, paid by the load. James Wheeler stood at the back, kept his eyes forward. When the foreman, a thick man with red knuckles named Dale Simmons, came out, he pointed at 15 men. You. His finger moved down the line, stopped 3 men before James. "That's it. Rest of you, try tomorrow." The line dispersed. James didn't move. Dale noticed. "You deaf?" "No, sir, just persistent." Dale walked closer, looked him over. "You ever work lumber?" "Yes, sir. Georgia. 3 years." "Why you here?" "Mill shut down. Needed work." Dale studied his hands, saw the calluses, real ones. Bumpy had spent 2 weeks on a dock in Harlem lifting crates to earn them. "You got a name?" "James Wheeler." "Wheeler." Dale turned the name over. "All right. Tomorrow, 6:30. Don't be late." James Wheeler worked that mill for 2 months. Lifting, hauling, stacking. He said little, worked hard, ate lunch alone. When other men talked, he listened. He learned who had money, who had debts, who drank, who went to church, who complained about the colored problem, who complained the loudest. One name kept coming up: Roy Tucker. Roy worked the saw line. 51 years old, missing 2 fingers on his left hand. Talked about restoring order during lunch breaks. Talked about brotherhood and defending heritage. James Wheeler waited 3 weeks before approaching him. December 10th, end of shift. Roy walked toward the parking area. James fell into step beside him. "Mr. Tucker?" Roy stopped, looked at him. "Yeah, name's James Wheeler. Been working the yard 2 months now. I know who you are. I heard you talking last week about the brotherhood, about standing up for what's right." Roy's expression shifted. Cautious. "You heard wrong." "No, sir. I heard clear." James kept his voice low, respectful. "My cousin, Memphis, lost his job to a colored man last year. They gave his foreman position to someone who couldn't even read the work orders right. Company said it was fairness. My cousin said it was the end of everything his granddaddy built." Roy was quiet, watching. "I'm tired of watching it happen," James continued. "Tired of staying quiet. If there's men here doing something about it, I want to know how I can help." Roy looked around. The parking lot was mostly empty. He stepped closer. "You talked to anyone else about this?" "No, sir." "You keep it that way. I don't know you. You don't know me. Understood?" "Yes, sir." Roy studied him for 10 more seconds. Then, First Baptist Church, Thursday night, 9 o'clock, side entrance on the alley. Wear dark clothes. Don't bring nothing with you. "And Wheeler?" "Yes, sir." "If you're lying about who you are, you won't leave that building." "I understand." Roy walked to his truck, didn't look back. James Wheeler stood in the parking lot until every vehicle was gone. Then he walked 3 miles back to his room instead of taking the bus. He needed to think. That night, he sat on his bed with a pencil and paper, wrote one letter. Addressed to Mamie Johnson, Edgecombe Avenue, Harlem, New York. The letter said, "I found the door, walking through Thursday. If you don't hear from me in 2 weeks, tell Illinois where I went. Tell him to finish it." No signature. He mailed it the next morning from a post office 4 blocks away. Thursday, December 12th. 1946. James Wheeler arrived at First Baptist Church at 8:53 p.m. The side door was unlocked. A narrow staircase led down to the basement. One light bulb, concrete walls. At the bottom, a man stood waiting, tall, arms crossed, revolver on his hip, barely concealed. Name: James Wheeler. Roy Tucker told me to come. The man looked him over, patted him down. No weapon, no identification, nothing. Wait here. 5 minutes passed. Then Roy Tucker appeared from a doorway. Wheeler, come with me. They walked into a larger room. 12 men sat in folding chairs arranged in a semicircle. No hoods yet, just faces. James Wheeler memorized everyone. Roy gestured to an empty chair in the center. Sit. James sat. A man in the front, mid-50s, clean-shaven, expensive watch, leaned forward. I'm going to ask you some questions. You answer true, or you don't answer at all. Understood? Yes, sir. Where you from? Born in northern Georgia, raised in Tennessee, moved around for work. Family? Mama passed in 43. Daddy left when I was 6. Got a cousin in Memphis. That's it. You ever been arrested? No, sir. You ever associate with coloreds? James paused. Just long enough. Only when I had to for work. Didn't like it. Why not? Because they don't know their place, and nobody's teaching them. The man leaned back, looked at Roy. Roy nodded slightly. You understand what we do here. I understand you're trying to preserve something worth preserving. And what's that? James looked him dead in the eye. Order, respect, the way things are supposed to be. Silence. Then the man stood, extended his hand. Vernon Hightower, welcome to the Brotherhood. For the next 8 months, James Wheeler became a ghost. He attended 47 meetings, learned their structure, their code words, their hierarchy. He watched them plan, watched them train, watched them bring in weapons, cash, lists of targets. He never volunteered for violence. Always had an excuse. Bad back. Needed to work early. Had to help his landlady. They didn't push. Plenty of men wanted the action. James Wheeler was useful for other things: listening, remembering, staying invisible. By March 1947, he knew the entire Birmingham operation. By May, he knew about the northern expansion. By July, he knew every name on the Harlem target list. He sent 4 letters total, one every 6 weeks. Never the same post office twice. Never more than 5 sentences. Mamie received them all, showed them to Illinois. They kept Harlem ready without knowing when Bumpy would return. In August, Vernon Hightower showed James Wheeler the photograph of Bumpy Johnson. You know this man? Vernon asked. James looked at his own face. Older, cleaner, different. Taken 2 years prior outside the Savoy Ballroom. No, sir, he said. Never seen him. You will. He's first on the list. James handed the photo back. What's he done? He exists. Vernon smiled. That's enough. September 27th, 1947. James Wheeler wrote his last letter. This one was different. 3 pages. Names, addresses, meeting times, weapon caches, financial backers. The entire operation, documented in Bumpy Johnson's precise handwriting. He mailed it to 3 different people. 1 to Mamie, 1 to Illinois Gordon, 1 to Thurgood Marshall, NAACP headquarters, New York City. Then he burned every paper in his room, packed nothing, left the key on the dresser. At 7:30 p.m., he walked to Mrs. Hobbs's door downstairs. I'm leaving tonight, ma'am. Work up north came through. She looked surprised. You paid through next week. Keep it. You've been kind. She studied his face. Something in his expression made her pause. You in some kind of trouble, Mr. Wheeler? Bumpy Johnson, because that's who was standing there now. The mask-wearing Thin smiled slightly. No, ma'am. But someone else is about to be. September 28th, 1947, 8:30 p.m. James Wheeler walked into First Baptist Church for the last time. 400 men. The largest gathering the Birmingham chapter had ever held. Men from 6 states. All here for the oath of purification. All here to prepare for the Harlem operation. He stood in the back row, hood on, and waited. Vernon Hightower called the ceremony to order. And when Vernon said, "Wheeler, James Wheeler, step forward," Bumpy Johnson walked down that aisle, knowing exactly what he was about to do, knowing some of these men would try to kill him, knowing he'd planned for that, knowing that in 3 days, every name in this room would be in the hands of people who'd make sure they never hurt Harlem again. He reached the altar, gripped the hood, and pulled it off slow. The hood came off slow. Bumpy Johnson stood under a single bulb that hung from a wire in the church basement ceiling. Yellow light. Shadows cutting across his face. 400 men in white robes staring at him. For 3 seconds, nobody moved. Vernon Hightower stood 2 feet away, hand still extended toward the Bible on the altar. His smile froze, then cracked, then disappeared completely. "You," Vernon whispered. Bumpy didn't respond, just stood there, calm, hands at his sides. The hood draped over his left forearm like a waiter's towel. Someone in the 3rd row stood up fast. Chair scraped concrete. "That's the N. I know who it is." Vernon cut him off. His voice shook slightly. Not fear yet. Confusion, the kind that comes before rage. "That's Bumpy Johnson." The name moved through the room like voltage. Men stood. Hands went to belts, to pockets, to anywhere a weapon might be. The 2 guards at the back door drew revolvers. Someone near the front pulled a knife, 8 inches, hunting style, but nobody moved forward. Because Bumpy Johnson wasn't running, wasn't reaching for a weapon. He just stood there under that light, looking at Vernon Hightower with an expression that said one thing: "I know exactly where I am." Vernon's face went red. "You've been..." He couldn't finish the sentence. "You've been here. In our meetings. You..." "6 months," Bumpy said quietly. His voice carried in the silence. Not loud. Didn't need to be. 47 meetings. I sat in the back row. 3rd seat from the left, every Tuesday, every Thursday. A man near the altar, older, white beard, suspenders, stepped forward. "He's been spying. He's been learning," Bumpy finished. "Your names, your addresses, your plans." He looked directly at Vernon. "Everything." Vernon's hand moved toward his waistband. Stopped. Bumpy saw the calculation behind his eyes. 400 men in this room. Guards at every exit. Johnson's alone, unarmed. But Vernon didn't draw. "You're not leaving here," Vernon said. "I know." That answer made the room shift. Men glanced at each other. This wasn't panic. This wasn't someone who realized they'd made a mistake. Bumpy reached into his jacket pocket. Slow. Every man with a weapon tensed. He pulled out a folded piece of paper. Held it up. "This is a list," he said. 63 names. Everyone in the Birmingham chapter, addresses, phone numbers, places of employment. He paused. "Family members." Vernon's face changed. "You're bluffing." "Roy Tucker, 412, 7th Avenue South. Works at Barker's Mill. Wife, named Christine. 2 daughters, Linda, 15, and Carol, 12. They go to Woodlawn High School." Roy Tucker, standing in the 5th row, went pale. Bumpy's eyes moved through the room. "Dale Simmons, 89, 3rd Street North, foreman at the mill, divorced, lives alone, drives a 41 Ford pickup, license plate JN, 4782. Dale stepped back like he'd been struck. "Vernon Hightower, 1502 Highland Avenue, owns 3 hardware stores, married to Patricia. 1 son, Vernon Jr., 19, attends Howard College." Vernon's hand was shaking now. Bumpy continued. "I can keep going. All 63. Every man in this room from Birmingham. I know where you live, where you work, where your families sleep." The room was dead silent. "That list," Bumpy said, still holding the paper, "is in 3 places right now. 1 copy went to my people in Harlem. 1 went to the NAACP. and one went to a federal prosecutor in New York who's very interested in domestic terrorism. You're lying, Vernon said, but his voice had no weight. The letters were mailed yesterday. They'll arrive tomorrow. Bumpy folded the paper, put it back in his pocket. You can kill me right now. Won't change that. A man near the back, younger, maybe 25, shaking with anger, raised his revolver. Then what's stopping us? Bumpy turned to look at him. Nothing. Go ahead. The young man's hand wavered. But understand something, Bumpy continued. You pull that trigger, every person on that list becomes a target. Not by me, I'll be dead, but by people who've been waiting for a reason, people who know how to find you in your homes, in your cars, in your churches. He let that settle. You kill me. You start a war you can't win. Because I didn't come alone. I came with information. And information doesn't die when I do. Vernon found his voice. You expect us to just let you walk out? Yes. Why would we do that? Bumpy stepped closer to Vernon, close enough that the older man instinctively backed up half a step. Because I'm offering you something, Bumpy said. What? A choice. The room waited. The Harlem operation is over. You don't go north. You don't touch a single business. You don't send a single man. That plan dies tonight. Vernon's jaw clenched. And if we refuse, then those letters get delivered. Federal agents show up at your homes. Your businesses get raided. Your families learn what you really do on Thursday nights. Bumpy paused. And after that, my people come. Not for you, for everyone you love. Someone behind Bumpy spoke up. You think we're afraid of threats? Bumpy didn't turn around, kept his eyes on Vernon. I'm not threatening you. I'm explaining consequences. There's a difference. Vernon was breathing hard now, trying to think, trying to find an angle. You're bluffing. You wouldn't. I burned down 3 KKK safe houses in Georgia last year, Bumpy said flatly. 1 in Tennessee, 2 in Mississippi. You didn't hear about them because nobody survived to report it. You think I won't do the same here? The room went colder. I didn't come to negotiate, Bumpy continued. I came to deliver a message. Harlem is protected. You come near it. You come near my people, and I don't call the police. I don't call the FBI. I handle it myself. And I handle it permanently. Vernon stared at him. Why not just kill us all right now? Because I'm giving you a chance to walk away. One chance. You take it. You live. You keep your families safe. You go back to your hardware stores and your mill jobs, and you forget Harlem exists. And if we don't? Bumpy's expression didn't change. Then I come back. And next time, I don't show my face first. Nobody spoke for 15 seconds. Then a man in the front row, older, gray hair, looked like someone's grandfather, said quietly, He's been here 6 months. He knows everything. He's been listening to every word we said. Another voice, he knows where we live. Another, he knows our kids' names. The fear spread like a stain. Vernon looked around the room, saw it. Saw men who came here feeling powerful, realizing they'd been compromised for half a year. That their anonymity, the only thing that made them brave, was gone. He turned back to Bumpy. You're one man. That's all it takes. We're 400, and I know every face in this room. Bumpy's voice stayed level. You know what I look like now, but I've seen all of you. Without the hoods. I know which ones of you are police, which ones are city officials, which ones have something to lose. Let that sink in. You want to test me? Go ahead. Send men to Harlem. See what happens. But know this, every man you send, I'll know his name before he crosses the state line. And I'll be waiting. Vernon's hand finally moved away from his waistband. Not surrender. Calculation. How do we know you'll keep your word? Vernon asked. How do we know you won't come after us anyway? Because I don't want war, Bumpy said. I want peace. I want my people to live without looking over their shoulders. You give me that. I give you the same. But you break this. You even think about breaking this. And I won't stop until every name on that list answers for it. The silence stretched. Then Vernon said, Get out. Bumpy didn't move. I need to hear you say it. Say what? That the Harlem operation is over. That you're calling it off. Vernon's face twisted. Pride fighting survival. He looked around the room, saw 400 men waiting for his decision, saw their fear, saw the cracks. He looked back at Bumpy. It's over. Say it louder. So everyone hears. Vernon's voice came out like gravel. The Harlem operation is canceled. Bumpy held his gaze for 3 more seconds, then nodded once. He turned toward the center aisle, started walking. Every man in that room watched him, weapons still drawn, hands still shaking with rage. But nobody moved. Bumpy Johnson walked between 200 men on each side, past the guards at the back, past the men who wanted to kill him so badly their teeth were clenched. He reached the stairs, climbed them slow. At the top, he stopped, looked back down at the room, at Vernon Hightower standing by the altar, at 400 white robes under yellow light. One more thing, Bumpy said. The room waited. You wear hoods because you're afraid of being seen. I took mine off because I'm not. Remember that. Then he pushed open the door and walked out into the Birmingham night. Alone, untouched, alive. The door closed behind him. Bumpy Johnson stood on the sidewalk outside First Baptist Church at 9:43 p.m. September air, humid, streetlights casting long shadows, the sound of cicadas and distant traffic. He didn't run, didn't look back, just started walking, north on 6th Avenue, steady pace, hands in his pockets, like a man leaving any other meeting. Behind him, through the basement windows level with the sidewalk, he could hear muffled voices rising, shouting, chaos trying to organize itself into a plan. Bumpy kept walking. He counted his steps, measured his breathing, listened for the sound of the door opening behind him, for footsteps, for engines starting. 50 steps. Nothing. 100 steps. Still nothing. At 200 steps, he reached the corner of 6th and 19th Street. Only then did he allow himself to turn his head slightly, glanced back. The church door remained closed. They were still deciding. Good. Inside the basement, Vernon Hightower stood at the altar, both hands pressed flat against the wood like he needed it to hold him up. 400 men were talking at once. We let him walk? He knows where we live. We should have shot him right there. He's bluffing about the letters. What if he's not? Vernon's mind was moving through scenarios, fast, trying to find the angle, trying to find the play that didn't end with federal agents at his door or a bullet in his sleep. Roy Tucker pushed through the crowd. Vernon, we have to go after him. Right now. Before he gets far. And then what? Vernon's voice was hollow. Then he's dead, and the problem's solved. Is it? Vernon looked up. He said the letters were already mailed. Said they're being delivered tomorrow. You kill him tonight. Does that stop them? Roy hesitated. Another man stepped forward. Charlie West worked at the rail yard. He's lying. Has to be. No way he had time to. He had 6 months. Vernon said, 6 months of sitting in this room, listening, writing, planning. He looked around. We talked about everything in front of him. Locations, dates, names. We thought he was one of us. The weight of that hit the room like a sledgehammer. Someone in the back. How do we even know he's really Bumpy Johnson? Could be someone pretending to. It's him. This came from a thin man near the front. Edgar Price. Used to work in Harlem before moving south. I seen him once, 3 years ago. Outside the Cotton Club. That's him. Silence. Vernon's hands curled into fists. Then we have a decision to make. And we have about 3 minutes to make it before he's out of range. What decision? Roy demanded. We kill him or we don't. That's simple. No, Vernon said. It's not. He straightened up. If those letters are real, if they're already in the mail, killing him makes it worse. Makes us look guilty. Makes us look scared. And it puts targets on all our backs. So we just let him go? Vernon didn't answer right away. A voice from the middle of the crowd. What about our operation? What about Harlem? We spent 8 months planning. It's over. Vernon said. The words tasted like poison. You heard him. We go north, he comes back, and next time, we won't see him coming. You believe that? You believe one man can? He just walked into a room with 400 of us, Vernon said. Unarmed, stood under that light and told us exactly what he did and what he'll do. And we let him walk out. So yes, I believe it. The room went quiet. Roy Tucker stepped closer, lowered his voice. Vernon, we can't let this stand. We look weak. We are weak, Vernon hissed. He exposed us. He's been inside our operation for half a year. You understand what that means? Everything we planned, he knows. Everyone we trust, he's seen. We don't even know what else he did while he was here. That thought rippled through the crowd. What do you mean? Someone asked. Vernon's face went pale. What if he didn't just listen? What if he took documents? What if he photographed the membership rolls? What if? He stopped, turned, walked quickly toward the back storage room where they kept the records. 20 men followed. Vernon threw open the door. Shelves lined with boxes, files, ledgers. He grabbed the main membership book, black leather, 3 inches thick, opened it, flipped through pages, stopped. No, he whispered. Roy looked over his shoulder. What? Vernon turned the book around, showed him a page. 3 names had been circled in pencil. Light, easy to miss unless you were looking for it. And next to each name, a small notation in handwriting that wasn't Vernon's. Police captain, vulnerable. City councilman, blackmail possible. Judge, corrupt. Vernon flipped to another page. More circles. More notes. He marked them, Vernon said. He marked everyone who could be turned. Everyone who had something to lose. He dropped the book on the shelf, backed away. He wasn't just gathering names, Vernon said. He was building a map, a strategy. Roy's voice cracked. What do we do? Vernon walked back into the main room. 400 men waiting. He climbed onto a chair, looked out at all of them. The operation is canceled, he said. Louder now. Official. Effective immediately. Nobody goes to Harlem. Nobody contacts our people up north. We shut it down completely. Protests erupted. We can't just, this is surrender. We look like cowards. Listen to me, Vernon shouted. The room quieted. That man has everything. He has our names, our families, our plans. He has legal ammunition. He has federal connections. And he has 6 months of intelligence we didn't know he was gathering. He paused. You want to go after him? Fine. You do that on your own. But this chapter, this organization, we're done with Harlem. We're done with him. Because if we're not, we won't survive what comes next. The room didn't respond, just stared. Vernon stepped down from the chair, walked to the altar, picked up the Bible they'd used for the oath. Meeting's over, he said. Go home. Protect your families. And pray he keeps his word. Outside, 3 blocks away, Bumpy Johnson sat on a bench at a bus stop. Docus, Elisekispeme. He'd been there for 8 minutes, watching the street, waiting to see if they'd come. A car passed, slowed slightly. Bumpy's hand moved inside his jacket, not to a gun, to a small glass vial. Cyanide. Enough to kill him in 30 seconds if they took him alive. The car kept driving. Another minute passed. Then another. At 10:04 p.m., Bumpy stood, walked to the corner, flagged down a cab driven by a black man, which in Birmingham meant someone who asked no questions. Train station, Bumpy said. The driver looked at him in the mirror. Something in Bumpy's face made him nod and drive, without speaking. They arrived at Terminal Station at 10:19 p.m. Bumpy paid, stepped out, walked inside. The next train to Atlanta left at 11:05 p.m. From Atlanta, he'd catch a connection to Washington. From Washington, back to New York. He bought a ticket, sat in the colored waiting area, pulled his hat low, and for the first time in 6 months, he allowed himself to breathe. Not relief, not yet, but something close. At 10:47 p.m., a man in a brown suit sat down 2 seats away. White, mid-40s, newspaper in hand. Bumpy watched him from the corner of his eye. The man opened the paper, pretended to read. Then, without looking at Bumpy, said quietly, "You just made a lot of people very nervous." Bumpy didn't respond. The man continued, "Federal Bureau of Investigation. We've been watching that church for 4 months, trying to build a case." He turned a page. "Then you walk in and hand us everything on a silver platter." Bumpy's voice was barely audible. "The letters get delivered? Tomorrow morning. All 3, just like you said. Then we're square." The agent folded his paper. "Not quite. You committed multiple felonies infiltrating that organization. Fraud, identity theft, trespassing. You going to arrest me?" The agent stood. "No, but you owe us, and we don't forget debts." He walked away. Bumpy sat alone until they called his train. At 11:05 p.m., he boarded, found a seat in the last car, watched Birmingham disappear through the window. He didn't sleep, didn't close his eyes once during the entire trip, because he knew Vernon Hightower, knew men like him. They'd keep their word tonight, maybe tomorrow, maybe for a week, but eventually pride would outweigh fear, and when it did, Bumpy Johnson would be ready. October 1st, 1947, 8:23 a.m. 3 letters arrived in New York City. The first reached Mamie Johnson at the Edgecombe Avenue apartment. She opened it at the kitchen table, read it twice, then picked up the phone and dialed a number she'd memorized months ago. "Illinois. It's done. He's coming home." The second letter arrived at NAACP headquarters on 5th Avenue. Thurgood Marshall opened it in his office, spent 11 minutes reading, then called his assistant, "Get me the FBI field office now." The third letter reached the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Southern District of New York. A prosecutor named William Harris read it, standing at his desk. When he finished, he sat down slowly and reached for his phone. "I need a team, 6 agents, and I need wiretap authorization for 63 addresses in Birmingham, Alabama." By noon, the machine was in motion. October 1st, 1947, 2:17 p.m., Birmingham. Vernon Hightower sat in his office above the main hardware store on 2nd Avenue. Paperwork spread across his desk, trying to focus, trying to pretend the last 72 hours hadn't happened. The phone rang. He picked up. "Hightower Hardware. Mr. Hightower, this is Agent Edward Moss, Federal Bureau of Investigation. We need to speak with you regarding your involvement in a domestic terrorist organization." Vernon's blood went cold. "I don't know what you're—" "We have documentation, names, addresses, meeting minutes. We know about the Harlem operation. We know about the bombings in Memphis and Birmingham. And we know you're the Grand Cyclops." "Silence. You can speak with us voluntarily, or we can obtain a warrant and conduct this conversation in federal custody. Your choice." Vernon hung up, sat there shaking. The phone rang again 15 seconds later. He didn't answer. It rang 6 more times in the next hour. October 2nd, 1947. Roy Tucker was pulled over on his way to work. 6:42 a.m. 2 squad cars. 4 officers. They searched his truck. Found a wooden cross in the bed. Found pamphlets under the seat. Found a membership card tucked in his wallet. "You're under arrest for conspiracy to commit acts of domestic terrorism." Roy tried to run, made it 11 feet. By October 5th, 14 members of the Birmingham chapter had been arrested. By October 8th, federal agents had raided 6 homes, 3 businesses, and the First Baptist Church basement. They seized documents, financial records, weapons, everything Bumpy Johnson had told them they'd find. The local newspapers ran the story on page 3 at first, then page 1. Then it became national. KKK terror plot exposed in Birmingham. Federal agents dismantle Harlem bombing conspiracy. Dozens arrested in multi-state investigation. Vernon Hightower's hardware stores lost 80% of their business in 2 weeks. His wife filed for separation. His son dropped out of college and changed his name. Vernon himself was indicted on 17 federal charges, facing 40 years. He never went to trial. On November 3, 1947, his lawyer negotiated a plea deal. Vernon gave up names, locations, financial backers, everyone above him and everyone below. The organization collapsed from the inside. October 4th, 1947, Harlem. Bumpy Johnson stepped off the train at Penn Station at 6:52 p.m. He'd been gone 8 months. Felt like 8 years. Illinois Gordon was waiting at the platform. Didn't say anything. Just gripped Bumpy's shoulder once. That was enough. They walked to a car parked on 7th Avenue, drove north in silence. When they crossed 110th Street into Harlem, Bumpy looked out the window, saw the lights, saw people on the sidewalks, saw life continuing the way it should. "Anything happen while I was gone?" he asked. Illinois kept his eyes on the road. Not one bomb, not one fire, not one threat. The police? Still useless. But nobody needed them. They pulled up outside the apartment on Edgecombe. Bumpy sat there for a moment. Didn't move. "You all right?" Illinois asked. "Yeah." Bumpy opened the door, just remembering what it feels like to be home. Mamie was waiting in the apartment. She didn't cry, didn't run to him, just stood in the kitchen doorway and looked at him for 10 seconds. Then she walked over and held him. "Don't ever do that again," she whispered. "I won't. I mean it. I know." They stood there for a long time. October 7th, 1947. Word spread through Harlem like gospel. Not the full story. Nobody knew the details. But people knew Bumpy had been gone, knew something had been threatening them, and knew the threat had stopped. At Small Paradise, cafe rebuilt after the bombing, Marcus Webb hung a photograph behind the bar. Black and white. Bumpy Johnson standing outside the Teresa Hotel in 1945. "That man saved us," Marcus told anyone who asked. "Don't know how. Don't need to know. But he did." Other businesses followed. Quiet tributes. Small acknowledgments. Bumpy never spoke about it publicly, never confirmed the stories, never denied them. But when he walked through Harlem, people nodded, showed respect, not because they feared him, because they knew. November 1947. Malcolm X, still Malcolm Little then, just out of prison, finding his way, came to Harlem for the first time. Someone told him if he needed protection, there was a man to see. Malcolm found Bumpy at a corner table in Jock's Place on 145th Street. Sat down without being invited. "You Bumpy Johnson?" Bumpy looked up from his coffee. "Depends who's asking. Someone who heard you stand up when other people sit down." Bumpy studied him. Young, intense, searching for something. "What do you need?" "Nothing right now. But I'm trying to do something important. Trying to wake people up, change how they see themselves. And I know that's going to make enemies. It will." "So when it does," Malcolm said, "I want to know if there's anyone in this city I can trust to have my back." Bumpy was quiet for a moment. Then, "You do the work. I'll make sure you're safe while you do it." Malcolm extended his hand. Bumpy shook it. That handshake would last until 1965. December 1947. A package arrived at the Edgecombe Avenue apartment. No return address. Postmarked Birmingham. Inside, a white hood, neatly folded, and a note in handwriting Bumpy recognized as Vernon Hightower's. "You won." Bumpy held the hood for a moment, then walked to the fireplace, threw it in, watched it burn. Mamie stood beside him. "Is it over?" "For now. And later? Later, if they come back, I'll handle it the same way." She looked at him. "By disappearing for 8 months? No." He watched the flames consume the white fabric. "By making sure they're too afraid to start." January 1948. The FBI closed its investigation into the Birmingham Klan chapter. 63 arrests total, 47 convictions. The organization never recovered in Alabama. Similar operations collapsed in Tennessee, Georgia, Mississippi. The network Bumpy had exposed led to networks nobody knew existed. One federal agent, the same one who met Bumpy at the train station, wrote in his report, "Subject infiltrated a domestic terrorist organization for 6 months, gathered actionable intelligence, and dismantled a multi-state operation without firing a single shot. Methodology was illegal but effective. Recommend no prosecution. Subject's cooperation, while unofficial, prevented multiple civilian casualties." That report was classified for 30 years. Bumpy Johnson died of a heart attack on July 7th. He was 63 years old. His funeral was held at Abyssinian Baptist Church. Over 1,000 people attended: gangsters, musicians, activists, politicians, people who'd never met him but knew what he'd done. Malcolm X had been gone 3 years by then, but his widow, Betty Shabazz, came. So did Muhammad Ali. So did Adam Clayton Powell, Jr. During the service, an older man in the back row, white, wore a suit, didn't give his name, stood up when they asked if anyone wanted to speak. "I didn't know Mr. Johnson personally," he said, "but in 1947, I was part of an investigation, and I learned that sometimes the law can't protect people. Sometimes it takes someone willing to walk into hell alone." He sat back down. Nobody asked who he was. Vernon Hightower died in a federal prison in Kentucky. Lung cancer. He'd served 6 years of a 20-year sentence. Before he died, he gave one interview to a journalist researching the civil rights era. The journalist asked, "Do you regret what you did?" Vernon was quiet for a long time. Then, "I regret underestimating one man. I thought we were an army. Turned out we were just cowards in costumes, and he proved it without killing a single one of us." "Who was he?" Vernon smiled, bitter. "The only man who ever made me feel afraid in a room full of people on my side." That interview was never published. A historian researching Harlem's history found a box of letters in an estate sale. Letters from Mamie Johnson to her sister, written between 1946 and 1948. One letter, dated October 1947, said, "Ellsworth came home last night. He won't tell me everything that happened, but I know it was dangerous. I know he went somewhere he shouldn't have survived, and I know he did it because no one else would. That's who he is. That's who he'll always be." The historian included the letter in a book about unsung civil rights heroes. The chapter about Bumpy Johnson was titled, "The Man Who Wore the Hood, Present Day, Harlem." There's a small plaque outside what used to be Small Paradise Cafe on 135th Street. The building's a community center now. The plaque reads, "In memory of those who protected this neighborhood when no one else would. 1946 to 1947. No names. Doesn't need them. People in Harlem know, and they tell their children, and their children tell theirs. The story of a man who walked into a room full of his enemies, took off his mask, and made them blink first. Not with violence. With certainty. The certainty that some things are worth risking everything for, and some places are worth dying to protect." Bumpy Johnson never wrote a book, never gave speeches, never sought recognition. But Harlem remembers, and that's the only legacy that mattered to him. Ending call to action. The KKK thought they could terrorize Harlem from the shadows. Bumpy Johnson walked into those shadows and became the thing they feared most. Not a monster, a mirror, showing them exactly who they were when the hoods came off. If this story reminded you that courage doesn't always look like violence, sometimes it looks like patience, strategy, and walking alone into rooms where you're outnumbered 400 to 1, hit that subscribe button. Because there are more stories like this. Stories about people who didn't wait for permission to protect what mattered, who understood that real power isn't loud, it's certain.